Yeah, like that sensation you're talking about of feeling dry. I kind of have that all the time where like I'm like, how am I still thirsty when I've drank? Like I have like it's a pretty big bottle. I think you fit like a liter of water in it. I have 2 of them a day, so that's like 2 liters of water. And I'm still like, oh, I need like to just sit in a vat of liquid for I don't know, a long time and absorb the liquid somehow. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's
Yeah,
just weird.
I have had that issue my whole life, basically. I feel like for years when I was in gymnastics and you're just like in a gym barefoot with chalk and stuff like that all the time, I like my feet and hands and everything have just been an absolute train wreck for like as long as I can remember. And I'm the
Yeah.
same now. I go to bed and you've been training all day and your hands are just hot and hurt and they I just lather up. I do my best, but my skin will just suck any moisture in really quick and like be begging for more. So there's no limit. I feel like I can never give it enough care, but hey, do my best.
Elisa, did Pat get a haircut? You did get a haircut. It looks great. Your hair looks great.
I did a week ago.
Yeah,
It's
it looks
1
really
week
good.
old. So thanks for noticing.
Do you do like a championship haircut? Are you like, okay, the week before I go to Madison, I'm gonna get my games cut?
Like honestly, sometimes I'm a little tired of hearing about it, but I just to be honest, I don't care that much. Like I probably get a haircut like 3 times a year, maybe.
Really?
Yeah, so I just don't. I like it's so not on my radar that
Yeah.
I don't care. And like I'm working 2 days a week in clinic, and I can like polish it up enough to look professional and like slick it back or do something. But most of my life these days, I'm like either on my way to the gym, on my way back. I'm like between sessions. I'm training. Like I cannot be bothered.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's fair.
I'm not trying that hard. And then my wife has been advocating for it's like, hey, when you're going to large events, like people are going to be taking lots of pictures of you, right? Like, would you just like put like the smallest amount of effort into it? So I've taken that recommendation to heart. So I try
Would you
to,
ever do like didn't Fraser used to cut his hair, like shave his head, because then he just didn't have to consider it at all. Like didn't never had to consider it.
yeah, but I think I got a lumpy head from falling on my head in
Yeah, that's
gymnastics for
always a
years.
concern
So
with shaving
I'm
your head.
not sure. I'm not sure I have the nice head shape like Matt did. So
That
I'm
was a
not sure.
job. That was a job for lockdown. In one of the lockdowns, you should have shaved it. No one would have
Just
seen you.
I know
Yeah,
what it
that was
seems.
your
I'll try it on.
opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I know. I maybe dropped the ball on that, but we'll see. Both my brothers have shaved heads, so I don't know. They got some good domes on them. Maybe one day, but I'm not there yet. But basically, all it's done is I schedule my 2 or 3 haircuts a year around major events. So I'll get
Okay.
one like in the winter, maybe a little while before Wadapalooza or something, and then I'll get one in the summer, a little bit before the games, and try to clean it up a little bit. But
Do
anyways,
you have any kind of like pre-game routine? As in, obviously, I don't mean like the day before, but like say before you go to Madison, have you got like, like the 3 days before I always go to such and such a place for lunch, or I always go like, have you got any of those kind of not superstitions, but like things that you like to tick off, like personal little things that you like to tick off before you go to a big competition or a big event?
no, not at all. I think there's too much swirling in my life on a daily basis that I don't have time or space for those kind of things. So I try to make sure I tie up as many loose ends as I can at home and make sure things are going to be fine. And then I just take off and do whatever's around. Like some places where you go regularly, like I've competed at Wadapalooza the last kind of 4 years, and there's places that are around that downtown area that I know, if I'm training leading up to, I can train at this place, I can eat at this place, and they're like, they kind of have what I need. But nothing that's like I'm so programmed to do that it'll make me feel off if I don't do it. And to be honest, I try to avoid stuff like that, because that's sometimes what can happen is if you miss that, then you can't check that box for whatever reason, then you just feel weird.
Yeah.
So as much as you can avoid those things, I think it can actually benefit you.
Yeah.
So,
Where the fuck are my green socks?
Yeah, just try to get a good night's sleep. Try to make sure I kiss my wife before I go to sleep, and other than that, I'm not too bad.
Yeah. If this was Savan's show, he'd say, "I try to kiss your wife before I go to sleep too," but I'm not going to stoop that low. If you
Good luck. Good luck. She's not handing them out. I got to earn those every day.
do you still get nervous? Like, do you still get like, obviously we're a good bit out now, but say like when you were more so maybe when you're on your own in Wadapalooza rather than on the team, and when you're heading back to Madison, like, do you still have it? Does it go beyond the, you know, 5 minutes before you go out on the floor? Like, do you have like jitters maybe the week before, or are you so in control of all the controllables that it's just kind of, it is what it is?
Control is a bit of an illusion, I think, in our sport, but definitely, like this year actually at semifinals, I had a whole conversation about this with some people close to me, but I felt like this year I was really nervous at semifinals, and I was trying to figure out exactly what it was that was doing it, more so than I remember being recently. And the best I could figure, there was kind of two things that I could put my finger on. One is that I'm not remembering properly, and I actually do feel that nervous every time. But when you get through something and then you look
Yeah.
back on it, it never feels quite as bad as it was in the moment. So I think there is a little bit of that going on, that, when you're stressed and things go on, you feel it. And then as soon as the moment's passed, you feel it significantly less. And your memory of it is significantly skewed, especially when things go well. All of a sudden, like everything gets painted in this rose color, and it was great. I was great. No problem. So that's point one. And the second one is that I think, given the point in my career that I'm at, I have a large body of work behind me, and part of that adds to pressure on performance that I put on myself, because I expect myself to perform at a certain level. And then I think nowadays it's starting to be combined a little bit with the fact that I don't know how many more competitions I'm going to have, right? Like, how many times am I going to run the circuit still? Like, say at the semifinal level, like, do I have two more left, three more, four more? Like, I don't know, but it's not 10 more.
Yeah.
So there's less opportunities ahead of you. And I think that as you kind of start to feel that window closing a little bit, every remaining opportunity becomes that much more important to you. And it's like, oh man, like, not even just from a performance perspective, but I got to look around and enjoy this, because this isn't going to be your life forever, and you got to, like, you do need to. I need to perform and show up and meet goal A and perform to the expectations that I have. But yeah, you're just kind of like, you're looking around and you're like, this is a bit, there's some stress behind that. And this year also at semis, I was there by myself. I didn't have my wife wasn't there. I didn't have any family or anybody with me, so that also, for me personally, I find challenging, because if I can talk about how I'm feeling and label things and identify them and express them and just sort of externalize them, it helps me to get it out of my head, and I don't ruminate quite so much.
Yeah.
But in the schedule we had at semis, you were like, we had 3-hour breaks, 4-hour breaks. And so you kind of go back and sit in your room, and I'm like sitting in a dark hotel room for 3 hours, just thinking about the next workout. And like, I've thought about it. I've thought about it every which way I possibly can. I already know. But I just can't get it out of my head. And it's like, I just need some distraction to keep me away from that. So, I think you're always learning about yourself and trying to figure out the best ways to manage those things. Because, over the course of a 10-year career, like, your situation changes, you change, everything changes. So, I still, of course, I feel that way. And in some ways that's a really good thing, because if I wasn't nervous at all, I'd be seriously concerned. It's sort of, that level of apathy is not a good thing going into anything where you would need to perform at a certain level.
Yeah.
So apathy, I think, would be more concerning than, a little bit of nerves. So yeah, I think team is a little bit different, like we did at Wadapalooza. You're like nervous to let down your teammates, I guess. But I think given what we had working with, to work with there, it was, everybody was pretty solid, and I wasn't super concerned that those guys would let me down or that I would let them down. I think we all knew that everybody would go to the wall for each other. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, there's always a bit of that. And I think for the games this year, my coach asked me the same question recently, and I'm not really getting nervous yet. We still got, a good 4 weeks to do some things. And I do think that as that window closes again, every training session and every rep feels like it has a lot more gravity behind it, as you close in on the games, because you're running out of time to polish things. You're running out of time to get things right. Once you're there, you got everything you got to work with, and that's it. That's the deck. That's the hand you've got, and you got to play it for the weekend. But every moment up to then, you can do something else, and you can develop a new skill, or you can learn more, or you can get a little bit better at something. So it's starting to get to that point, 3-4 weeks where certain types of sessions for sure I start to take a little more seriously, and focus extra hard on, and everything starts to feel like it's a little more valuable, or it has more weight behind it.
People are loving your haircut. Look, there's Barbell Spin, the patch to get a haircut. Like, yeah, we've discussed it at length. You mentioned there about like that the as you get, you're in maybe what some might describe as the autumn of your career. And as you head towards, as winter is like on the distant horizon, but on the horizon, you're saying that, the opportunities become less, so then the current opportunities become more important, or they feel more important. The last, say, number of years, is there a year that stands out there that you didn't enjoy? Like, is there any of those years where you were like, God, I fucking hated that year? Like, maybe not just the games experience, obviously like getting cut in 2019 or whatever, that's probably not that enjoyable, but like as in the season, like was there ever a year where you were like, God, I fucking hated training that year, and I considered stopping that year, or I considered giving up that year?
Not really. I don't know. I don't really know how to give up on things. It's difficult for me to stomach that thought. There's a lot of times in training week to week where I'm like, this sucks and I want to quit that, but I never do it. It's like, it's not those aren't real thoughts, I don't think, in my head. It's just like little things that you're like, yeah, this blows. And I think reality for me, my personality is such that I think I need to do that sometimes. Like I said, I need to identify emotions and externalize things. And sometimes that having a good vent, or just being able to look something and be like this really sucks. Like it's not fun all the time. And it's really not. And there's a lot of athletes who I think try to paint things super positive all the time. And that's a style of training, of like, oh, this is super fun. I'm enjoying the process and this and that. And like, for me, it's not that way, and it never has been. It's not always fun. And I think if you're really enjoying in the moment every piece of your training, my opinion is you're not really doing it right. I think there is a difference between finishing something that was very difficult that you did not enjoy, and then afterwards looking back on it and being like, hey, I'm really glad I did that. That sense of accomplishment is a different type of enjoyment. Like I would call that type 2 fun, where it was extremely challenging. It's like going on a big hike. You're like, you could be miserable the whole way, and then you summit the mountain and you're like, all right, it was okay, right? And like I said, those aches and pains and little things, looking back on them is never quite as painful, right? Once you're ahead of it, it's fine. But I'd be lying if I said like there wasn't, at least once a week where I look at stuff and I'm like, nah, forget this. Like, why do I do this to myself? So, competing has sort of always been that's the sport for me, right? Like and for everybody, like that's where the fun is. That's where the challenge is. Those are the things that you line up for. The rest of it is just a means to an end. And that's what's challenging in our sport is, we don't compete very often, and the load when you compete is really high. And, because we don't compete very often, it's really valuable. Like if you have a bad competition, it's not like I'm playing 80 games a year and I had a bad day on Saturday, but it's okay because I can show up in like 5 days later, and if I perform well that day, it kind of wipes it away. You may have to wait 5 months before you have another opportunity to show up and wipe away a poor performance. So that's another thing that contributes to high levels of stress and anxiety around events, is like you really need to show up and put out every single time, or you may miss out on some other opportunities. So yeah, I mean, there's years that things go a little better than others. There's years where you're dealing with injuries. Like I've had a couple of years where I was dealing with injuries throughout most of the year. It makes training very frustrating. It makes you feel like you're not moving forward. But I don't think I've ever really entertained the idea of being like, you're done. And I think that's just part of my personality. I like to be able to show up and I don't know, and do things that people don't think you can do or that you don't think you can do. And at this point in my career, I'm actually really enjoying just beating up on the young guys. Like, I think it's just, to me, that's like a quiet motivator for me every time I see all this stuff about hyping up all the young guys. And I'm like, all right, we'll see. But it's so it's fun for me. I know, and eventually I will be displaced, and I'm fully aware of that. But my goal right now in my career is to make that as difficult as possible for the next generation of athletes. And the people who manage to displace me will seriously deserve it, but they are seriously going to have to earn it. And that's the goal, is like, I'm not going to lay over and just because you say I'm getting old, like, come prove it to me, come take my job, because I still want it.
That's cool. Do you think, would you ever do, like, say Noah this year has said, "Oh, this is my last year." Do you think, would you do something like that, or would you just like say like just not turn up, like just not enter a score at the Open? Like, would you? I don't know if you're the type to be like, "Okay, guys, this is it, my final run," or even to be like, "I am like heretofore with announcing my retirement from the sport as of today." I just feel like you're the type that just won't submit a score to the Open some year, and people are like, "Hang on, where the fuck is Pat?"
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what kind of style I am. And I've talked to my wife a little bit about this. And I know her thought around it is that I think there's a lot of value in putting a stake in the ground and saying, hey, I'm going to step away after this year. I think it's liberating, and it gives you a chance to run the bases one more time and maybe really take an extra moment and enjoy it. And it also is a signal for people who have supported you over the course of your career that, like, hey, come see me, because it might be the last time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is nice, right? Like, I have a lot of people who've supported me a ton throughout my career, and I think to just vanish, it was a bit of a disservice to them. But I don't know. I think that there's a finality to that, right? And I definitely don't want to be the guy who goes, yeah, this is my last one, and then the next year you're itching a little bit and you go, just kidding. Like, I don't want to Tom Brady it and start like retiring and unretiring like every other season. And I think there's a point when enough is enough. And I think, we'll see. We've talked about, so I've definitely pushed the goalposts already several times. And I think, when I was at school, and my wife and I were both in university, the plan initially was like, hey, I first started doing CrossFit in undergrad, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. I don't know, this is something I can do clearly while I'm at school, and then I'm going to go get a job and maybe I'll do a little less of it. And then I went into professional school, and I did really well at the games that first year. And then I was like, cool. Well, maybe I can still keep doing this. You get some sponsors for a few-year contracts, and you're like, cool, well, I don't know, maybe I play out this contract. I'm going to graduate from professional school, and then, I'm going to go carry on with my career. I'll stop competing. And then, you have another few good years, and I graduate, and I'm like, well, now I have a little more free time. Like, maybe, why not? Okay, well, I'll sign another contract, and I'll move the goalposts another 2-3 years forward. And okay, but like at the end of this contract, I'll probably just retire, and then you have another great year. Like, so I keep doing that, and I think I try not to think so far ahead as like, oh, I've got a 10-year plan, but it's sports and lots can happen quickly. Injuries can take you out. Lots of things can change really, really quickly. So I've never tried to take it so for granted that I'm like projecting 5 years in the future. I'm planning small chunks at a time. Hey, if I get to that next waypoint and I decide time to reevaluate, and I'm like, you know what, from here, I think I only can do one more, or I don't know, I'll do another 2 or 3. We have that conversation, my wife and I, and we say, all right, cool. Well, here we go. We're off. And we plan for the next chunk. Right. But I have already moved the goalpost twice, I think. And we'll see where the next ones go after this. But I don't know. I think it would be nice to call it with 1 year to go and be able to like not have a victory lap where like you don't care as much, but to just for yourself be able to enjoy it, and for your supporters to be able to be like, hey, like this is, one last time around. Like, I don't know. And not like, no slight to the way other people have done it in their careers, but you like watch what Noah did at the semifinal this year. And he was just kind of in a different headspace, and he wasn't in the top 3, but crushed a few workouts, and is just like, he's clearly taking some time this year to really enjoy what he's been able to accomplish in his career, and just put a different version of himself forward, which is really cool. And, if you contrast that to say someone like Matt did when he retired, he competed one last year, and it was, by happenstance, it happened to be a year where you couldn't actually spectate very well. And then, when it started getting time to talk about the Open again, he just retired and was done. And he's been around, like he's very active in the scene now. It's not like he vanished off the face of the earth, which is great. But I think there's a lot of people who maybe would have loved to see him in person compete like one time or something like that. And I don't know, it's strange. His was a little weird because happenstance, it was weird circumstances, but I think we've seen it happen a few different ways, and I don't know where I fall on that, but there is something kind of cool and magical, I think, about what Noah's doing, and when people are able to sort of, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of going out on your own terms, right? And I think that's a bit of an overused trope, but it's sort of controlling your career in like one last way, which is cool. And then I know he's also left the door open to do some team stuff and things like that. So I'm certain we haven't seen the last of them.
Yeah. But even as well, there's that thing of like, you do want to retire. I assume anyway, I would. You want to retire on a high, like you don't want to say like, all right, guys, my last year, and then stumble at quarterfinals, like, the fuck, like, maybe I meant last games run, so I still have to do next year because I need a games run.
Yeah, I think it depends. Honestly, I think that type of thing used to matter more to me than I think it does now. And maybe that's just because I have more going on in my personal life and family and these kinds of things. But I think there's a point where if you just decide like, I don't have the time to give it anymore, and I decide, oh, well, I think I'm going to be done after this year, and, you get hurt or you don't have the season you want, you had already decided for other reasons. So I don't know if it would matter that much, selfishly, of course, you want to go out on a good year or something like that. But I will also say it makes it easy to walk away if you
don't want to win it. Like, you don't want to go that
right?
far, because then you're like, oh, well, I need to defend it.
And it's just like, I don't know. I mean, if I were to win this year, and then, some people say that though, oh, retire on top. Like, I don't know though. Would you want to, like, there's still lots of really fun, cool opportunities in the space. And if you're one of the best around, like, why not? Like, I don't know. Like I said, why not keep running around the bases and taking advantage of some of the cool things that this life has to offer? Because, I got a lot of years to work behind a desk or do other kinds of jobs and things like that. And I think the chance to do what I'm doing currently on a competition floor, those are finite, right? There's only so many years. So I don't know. I think I've more come to the realization that like when the sun is shining, make hay, man. Like you gotta do it while you can, because eventually you won't be able to. And if you just kind of left 3-4 years there on the table while your body was still good and your head was still right, I think that's just kind of a shame. And it's not to say that there's like a certain whatever age limit, like some people tap out mentally or physically at different times, or their threshold for what's too much or not or enough is different. So I don't know. I think you want to, ideally in a last round, you want it to be a strong run. But yeah, I wouldn't want to finish on the podium and then be like, I'm done. Because yeah, you'd feel like, well, hell, like if I'm still up there, like, why not? Let's run it back.
Do you ever talk to, like, say, I nearly said elder statesmen there, and that would have been so insulting to everyone. But like the guys who have been around the sport longer, like say, like Brent, BK, Yana, like, do you ever talk to those guys, Noah, about like, you mentioned there that like, oh, I want to beat like the young guys or whatever. Are you guys those like guys leaning on the fence in the crowd, being like, kids, and like, like, do you ever talk about like, oh, how long do you think you have left, or does that stuff ever come up, or is that totally personal to each person that you'd never really discuss it in that kind of scenario?
Yeah, we have just a Warhorse group chat and we talk about it all the time. Just talk about
Every
our
January or whatever, you all send in one more, and like just keep
talk
like,
about our sore knees, all our various injuries, and but no, I mean, yeah, like I even look this year at the guys like Cole and Noah and BK who qualified for their 10th games, right? Consecutive. Like those things are huge. Like those guys have been around, and that's a huge accomplishment, right? And I think it's awesome. Sport moves forward. Like I said, there is no doubt at all that we will be displaced. Someone like people are going to get better, and we're going to eventually get worse. Like that's just how life works. And I have no qualms with that. I get it. I'm not like trying to hang on to my youth forever, but I think that my job as an athlete is to make that process as difficult for the next group of athletes as possible. And that's how I look at it. And I think that's how those guys look at it. Like the guys that have been kind of holding it down in Europe for years, like I think we saw it in a big way in Europe this year at semifinals. Like there was a lot of new faces, a lot of new names who were doing quite well. And there were some people really planting the flag, but those guys don't want to let it go. Like you're not going to let it just, have one bad competition or one bad event and then just sort of phone it in. Like those guys have a huge amount of experience. I think the games is a different kind of thing. I think experience does go a long way. And having a strong competition pedigree is worth something. It's hard to argue with the body of work that some of those guys have behind them. Right. So, I think we talk about it a bit here and there, and I think it's cool because you don't feel it happening year to year. Right. I still, it's crazy to me that I'm like going into whatever my 8th games or something like that. And now looking around and being like, so I'm 33 this year at the games, and I'll be like I know we blessed Jason Smith. We got him as the true elder statesman this year at the games. But other than him, like I think it's him, Will Morad, and me are the 3 oldest guys at the games now. So it's like, I don't feel like that, but it happens quicker than you think. You look around and suddenly, first you were a rookie, you get to do that once, and then you're kind of like, you feel like you're in this sort of sophomore era for a little bit. And then suddenly I look around and I'm like, oh, I'm like one of the most veteran people in this group. Like, when did that happen? And so, the group that you came up with, like our kind of generation of guys that I competed against for the last 7 years, we all kind of look each other and we know each other well, right? We're all friends. We've competed lots. And I think it's sort of this unspoken thing that we're going to try to fend off the next group as long as possible. Right.
yeah.
So hold the line, but it happens, right? It happens in sports. So I think we all are very well aware of that. And I don't know. I'll welcome it when it comes, and I'll be the first guy to shake their hands and high five them and congratulate them. But like I said, they're going to have to step over my body.
Yeah. Fair play to Jason Smith as well. Like you say, he's pushing you right down into the average age. Like by just showing up, he's just like, you move back towards the middle.
I saw some stats about average, whatever age, height, weight of the fields this year, and I had to laugh about that. It was like, I think the average men's age was 27 or something, which I actually thought was older than I expected.
But that's probably is Jason. That's like driving.
He's pulling it up by like 2 years on his own.
Yeah.
So, and I think we actually do have a fair amount, because that cohort of strong athletes like the Noahs, the Cole, BKs, Brent, myself, Yana, like a lot of these people that are now like touching 30s, early 30s, those are guys, it's the same guys who've been kind of hanging out in the top 10 for the last long time. And we're just getting older. Yeah. But so that group now, we've just been slowly driving the average age up and up and up every year because those same guys are just around. And they're getting, some people are cycling through, but yeah, I mean, now we've got at least 10 guys in the men's field who are 30 years old, I think.
Yeah.
So
but even like, you
see that like, in the past.
The archetypal body type, and like, oh, the best CrossFit athlete would be this height, this weight, this age. Now you guys are fucking it up by like bringing the average up to like, wait, you should be 27. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
I know. Funny. That's what I like though. It's cool. It goes to show like these guys who were, they had something, right? Like that group, those were special athletes. And I think we all pushed each other over the course of a career, and we're continuing to do so. And we're being pushed by the next group as well. But yeah, I did have a laugh at those stats because the height and weights are certainly not accurate.
Well, I mean, if that was the one on Morning Chalk Up, they put the men's weight in kilos anyway. It was like the average women's weight was 96 kilos and the average men's weight was
Yeah,
64
no,
kilos or
but I don't
something.
even mean that. Like, I think they had the average men's weight at like 207 pounds. So, like, yeah, like 90 whatever kilos. And it is not that. And the average height at 6 feet is absolutely not accurate.
Yeah. See, it's so
That's
hard
just
as well
like,
because you're going off people's incorrect or non-updated games profiles, or like I know Brian Friend and Mike Halpin were trying to gather like information at check-ins and stuff at semifinals, but like it's
yeah.
really hard to gather all
Oh,
that
they
out
got to
before
have a pro day or something at check in where they actually weigh and measure you
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
because it like, all right, that like the average height for the guys being 6 feet, like, give me a break. Absolutely not. Not a
Yeah.
chance. I bet you we have 7 guys who are 6 foot plus max.
Yeah.
And then we have probably 15 who are like 5'6" or smaller or something like that. 5'7" or smaller. It just doesn't add up. All the guys just lying about their heights to be 6 feet.
Yeah. Oh, I'm 6'2", and it's like, no, Colton, you are not 6'2".
And like, I remember, man, I played lacrosse for years, and I remember when I played juniors, the program skewed everybody's height up 2 inches, and everybody's weighed up by about 5 kilos.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? But it's I had a good laugh about that. It's like, good for you, fellas.
Yeah. You have you seen the documentary yet for 2022? Like the one that's coming out Friday?
No.
Okay.
No. Have you?
So yeah, I have. Yeah.
Oh, look at you, pre-screening.
I can't believe I just dabbed on camera. There's a bit in it that you're in it. It's your classic, like, you know, Sarky Pat remarked camera that like I've become accustomed to in the documentaries. Didn't disappoint. Are you like, when you're in that kind of scenario, obviously there's an awful lot of shit going on, and like you've mentioned, you know, you're kind of used to competing and stuff, but like when you're out back and there's a camera there, are you aware that there's are you thinking like, oh, what I say now could potentially make it into a documentary, I better be careful of what I say? Or do you give a fuck?
I try not to swear, so that's probably the only thing. I try to find colorful ways to express my feelings. I don't know, not usually. Most of the time I'm trying to kind of make some jokes and provide levity, mostly because it makes me feel less stressed. But I think it's just, the games can be a lot of things, and it can be frustrating and it can be exciting, and you can feel great or bad or everything in between. And I don't know. I like to, like I said before, I like to be able to label things, say things out loud, and it gets it out of my head, and then I can move on. And I think one of the things that I've done well over the course of my career is move on from bad finishes, or frankly good finishes, and just continue to truck along the path to continue through the weekend. And I think that that's sometimes a big part of it, whether it's like, you know, and we know a lot of the media people, so I think sometimes you're not really talking to the camera, you're talking to the person.
Yeah.
And as the more years you're there, the more those are friends of yours, and you just kind of spout something off, and you're just like, whatever, and you kind of make a joke to your buddy, and then it ends up on a screen somewhere. But I do the same with my coach and things like that, and we just kind of, I don't know, I try to give the other athletes a hard time. I try, I don't know, I lay it out there. I don't think I'm intentionally trying to make awesome sound bites for the documentary, but I'm glad that I've managed to do so over the course of the last few years.
Yeah.
But
like, I don't want to worry you by making you think
about.
I don't want to worry you by making you think like you said something terrible. You didn't, but like,
okay,
it was a classic, like, Pat of like, oh, Pat, you know, like it was those classic like sound bites.
What event was it after?
It was after Justin passed Ricky on the lunge. It's in the trailer, actually. So you say like 3 lines, and one of the lines is in the trailer. So the line that's in the trailer is where you say, "Oh,
it's pretty good conversion. I only have 3 lines, and one of them is in the trailer."
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm trying to think. Maybe you are in it outside of that segment. I can't really remember.
I bet you, if I had to guess, I bet you they give me a little soundbite about the parallel the parallel bars. And then there's probably 1 or 2 just like, the hell just happened kind of things.
You say, so there's you say something like, oh, I was just hoping someone would pass Ricky, or I was just hoping someone would beat Ricky, or something like that. Something to that effect. About Justin passing him. It was when he wobbled on a lunge and Justin passed him on the field.
Yeah.
And then in the film, then it's longer. And if you don't want spoilers, you can just stop listening now. But it was funny because you said
I said it. I'm sure I
not you. I mean people watching.
Oh.
I give two shits about you. You said it. But yeah, you say, I was just happy that someone beat Ricky. That passed Ricky. And now, out of context, that's like, oh, like that's spicy. But it's like because he was currently leading the field, like obviously,
And he was like lapping the field for the first
yeah.
half of that competition too. I feel like it was
Yeah,
starting to get like, all right,
but
we got to start putting a few bodies in front of that guy. I don't care who it is, but some people got to start doing more. And I was actually struggling a little bit in the middle of the competition there, so I was like, I remember having a conversation with Justin in the back and being like, "You got to give me a hand here." And I was like, "Buddy, you're looking at the wrong guy. Like I'm fighting my own demons right now. Like I'm trying to figure out what the hell to do to right the ship. Like go tap somebody else on the shoulder. Like, I'm trying to figure out my own stuff." But and it was basically the same thing like that. Like just people. Ricky had a great first half of the competition, and I think everybody was looking for just some bodies to get in front of him. That's funny.
Yeah, but out of context, it's like, oh fuck, like that's spicy, like like this is always big, like you could cut the tension with a knife when that one line is taken out of context and nobody understands when it was said or why it was said or whatever. Then in the film, you're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense that he said that, and then if
sure that wasn't on purpose.
And but then afterwards, like directly after, it absolutely was, but directly after you said that, then you said, oh, it was you recapped like the moment or something to the camera. I assume it was Nico or someone that was on the camera, and you said like, "Oh yeah, Ricky wobbled or like stopped, and Justin just lunged right past him." And you said something like, "Oh, it's pretty impressive" or something like that. And then you were like, and the crowd went crazy when he passed Ricky, and then you were like, which was pretty funny. And then it just moves to the next scene, and I was like, oh god, Pat. It's just like it was a classic like Pat, like Sarky finish to a point of moving on to the next thing. Like I really enjoyed it. The games then, so you said you were struggling a bit in that middle segment or whatever. When you reflect on 2022, are you like, yeah, that was good, that went well, or are you like, oh fuck, like I left a lot of kind of stones unturned or whatever? Like, do you go after you finish in Madison, do you like, go right back to the drawing board and be like, right, we need to sort out this, that, and the other? Or are you like, no, we just keep going the way we're going. We need to tweak these few small little things, but we're thereabouts, and then the proof is in the pudding in semifinals kind of thing?
I mean, I think you have to reflect on where the mistakes got made. I definitely had bad games last year. I had too many bad performances relative to the field, and some on things that I should have been just much better at. I dealt with a little bit of heat issues in the mid part, like that capital event messed me up. And then that lunge event was the one right following that. And I was in a bad, that's a workout that I probably could have won on a normal day, but I was like trying to hold it together. Like I was trying to like not throw up, not shit my pants. Like I was like in bad shape. So I was just like, that was like, just do it. Don't even think about anybody else. If you just kind of finish it, you can probably park one in the top 10, and then we can start to like steer the ship back to straight. So that mid range, those couple workouts, I forget what we did that evening, but I had a really tough time on those ones. I struggled a little bit on the bike in the very beginning, and then the shuttle to overhead also was like a terrible one. So I had at least like 4 or 5 finishes that were nowhere near what they needed to be. So overall it was bad. I think you have to look at that and be like, hey, what happened there? What can we work on to try to make those things better? But you have to take time. I think it's silly to try to get right back on it. The trick with competition is that your motivation is never higher than right after a competition. Like emotions are high. You've just been shown in no uncertain terms what you need to work on relative to your peers, which is who you need to beat. So it's laid out right in front of you, and you can go, oh, I got my ass kicked at this and this, and I beat everybody handily at this and this. Like you got the blueprint. And so it's really tempting to just turn around, go right to the gym and start hammering on certain things. But that's where you kind of need the discipline to take a break, because mentally, physically, you can't do that and attack it with any serious rigor. You need to take some time, reset, let your nervous system settle down, and then build those things back up slowly. I think the temptation is that, you come off of that, you've got this aggressive motivation and you start really hammering things super hard, and you just can't keep a fire lit, burning that hot all the time, or you just start to burn out, and your body just starts to fail you. So you have to do it. And that's where a good coaching team and stuff like that helps, because sometimes you just have to be told no. And I think I've always kind of looked at it in the way my relationship is with Michelle. You know, I will do everything that is on the page every time with no exceptions. I will never skip anything. I will never take a longer break. I will do all of the things, but I will only do what's on the page. I will not do any extra. I will leave as soon as that's done. And if she has a plan of, okay, I trust her that she's building in those breaks and those resets post competition, the tapers, all that stuff. She has a good grasp on that, and we do that very well. And I think that it's one of the things that's allowed me to continue to perform at a high level over the course of my athletic career. And so we've built a ton of trust over the course of time, and we have those conversations after a competition. And then I'll be back to training when she says back to training. Until she says that, I won't do anything. And then it's like, all right, after a week, like, start doing some light jogging, like this and that. It's like, great. I'll do all the things every time, but I'm not about to do a bunch extra. That's for sure. I do it now.
You're her and Decca's only like individual elite athlete at the games this year. Does that bring any kind of, like, do you ever think about stuff like that? Are you ever like, fuck, I'm like, obviously you want to do well for yourself, etc., but like, are you ever like, oh shit, like, it would matter a lot for Decca if I do well, or for Michelle if I do well, and I'm the only opportunity she has this year to do well in this kind of arena? Like, does that stuff ever prey on you at all?
No, I don't think I ever really think of that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that you feel external pressures a little bit, but I also don't think that they're ever as significant as you imagine they are. I think that the real pressure is internal. If you're any kind of competitor, you may tell yourself it's external pressure. Everybody's looking at me. I need to do this. I don't want to let everybody down. Nobody cares. Like, people are happy for you when you succeed. The people who are close to you, it matters to them in that regard. But no one's like, if you make a mistake or you whatever, they feel bad for you because they know that it means a lot to you. But nobody's like, oh, that you don't let people down in that respect. So I think
Michelle's not like, that just cost me 5 potential member signups when they saw that.
Yeah, like, I think that pressure is completely imagined. And we do a good job of imagining it. It doesn't mean that it's less real for us, because we stress ourselves out over that shit all the time. But I think that coming to terms with that makes a big difference. So I don't know. I mean, I try to do as well as I can. Again, selfishly, like, for me, like, this matters for me a lot. And I think that I consider us a team. So it's hard to me. It's hard to separate the two of us when you look at the athletic performance. Like, I'm the hand that goes out on the floor and does the job. I go to the gym and I do the things, but she's kind of the think tank behind all of that stuff and the planning and things like that. So I think you have to kind of consider us both in combination. So I'm happy afterwards when you think about it and you're like, oh, I'm glad I was successful, like, selfishly again. But also, like, then you're like, oh yeah, and this is great for that. And those are all things that come with it, right? So none of that stuff happens in a vacuum. And the same, like, my success isn't manufactured in a vacuum. It's not just me, it's the help I get from other people. And then likewise, when there's a return on that investment, I'm glad that it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it's not just me that benefits from those things. It's all the people who were there for you to support you and do the things for you as well. So I don't know. I don't really, I wouldn't say I actively think of it. And probably, much to the annoyance of some people who are there to support me and help me out. I think I have heard from people in my family or various people in my circle that when I'm competing, they're like, it's almost annoying how disconnected I can get from everyone else and everything, because they're like, yeah, like I'll watch someone else who finishes and they like spot their family in the crowd and they wave and they're like, you're like so far from that it's not even funny. Like, I've never seen you once look or do a thing or like blink, and it's just, I don't know. I think maybe to a certain degree, that's one of the things that helps me be successful. I kind of quickly move on to the next task, and I'm very focused on what I need to do. But I can appreciate how that annoys the people who are there to support you and do those things. So
they're like frantically waving and you're just standing still.
Yeah,
like just stoic.
Yeah. Anyway, so, and I would love to say that I'm trying to be better at it, but I don't think it registers for me sometimes until everything's done, until it's like the last event is over and things are complete and I'm done my job. And now I can kind of like drop that wall and pay more attention to those things. But
so you've kind of alluded to the stresses that you're under for, like, you're either on your way to the gym or on your way home from the gym, or you're working I think you said 3 days a week or whatever, and then family as well. You've got Owen at home, he needs to be looked after. Your dog looks like quite a lump to be minding as well. And then you also do the PFA stuff, like you and Brent kind of front that makes it sound like it's a mafia thing, but you know what I mean. You're like you're heading it up. That's better. Is there, like, I kind of asked Brent this the other week as well, and I was kind of curious from you, like, is your hope that, like, whenever in 2033 when you retire, that you'll just like seamlessly move into that role and continue it on in like an actual professional capacity? Or is the hope that, like, within the next 6, 12, 18 months, you'll be able to say, like, now I'm done with that, I can support it, but this guy or this girl is in charge of it and it's off my plate and I don't need to worry about it. I got it to where it needs to be and now someone else is taking it over and it's done. Like, is there a plan for that kind of thing, like for succession or any of that?
It's starting to take more of that shape now. I think I right now when we're competing, I think it's difficult, and we would be more than happy to have someone take the reins of that kind of thing and read someone in to be able to do it. But it's just not feasible yet to completely release it and hope that it's going to move forward. So, early stages of these kind of things are defined by a lot of volunteer work and a lot of volunteer time and energy and that kind of thing. So, this time of year particularly, it's difficult for us to engage maybe with our full attention. And that's why we hope to have a little bit more help. And we've got some good people helping us now, which is great. But, in the future, if I'm done competing, I'd be interested in taking on a more active role maybe. But the hope is that we can have this run without us. And I think that the best future vision of it is that the most front-facing people that are helping to organize and run it are not competing athletes, because there is some level of conflict there, and we don't want that. Like, we want to create some separation between, the athletes competing and the CrossFit Games teams, or the people that we're trying to create relationships with and have negotiations with, or things like that. Because then otherwise there's no conflict of interest, and like, I'm trying to really lobby hard for this type of change to a certain movement and it's going to benefit this cohort of athletes. Like, we don't want it to be a lobbying group. Like, that's not the point. We want things to be fair. We want things to be safe. We want things like that. We don't want athletes to have to decide between being successful in a competition or taking some unreasonable risk. And so, I think the best way to do that is to have people who are not actively competing to be the ones in those roles. So, I mean, in the future, if I'm not competing, surely that's something I could do. I still like, I don't think I'm going to stop liking CrossFit or being engaged with this community or this group. And, I'm fortunate that I think with brands, like we are in a position where we're kind of leaders in the athlete group. We're members that have been around for a long time and have had some success. And so people take us seriously, which is cool. And it provides some level of validity to the things that we say, but we're trying to get information from everywhere. And I think that it's just, the hope is that in many years, if and when we retire, we can this will continue to exist with or without us, and there will be other athletes or other people who are actively involved in roles, and we can look at it many years down the road and see it, bear more fruit, right? Like we're trying to lay groundwork with the understanding that, like, we're putting in a lot of our own personal time and energy to try to help build something that we will likely not see the benefit from over the course of our career. The real benefits from it will likely come, farther down the line. So it would be cool to be able to look back and be like, hey, we had a hand in starting that. And
Or you could
leave some
like,
sort of lasting effect in the sport. It's a classic kind of try to leave things better than you found it sort of thing.
yeah. If you could get it to a point where it was earning, you could embezzle money out of it, and then at least like you're getting something, some kind of return on your time.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
Now you're thinking, yeah.
So obviously one of your main points of contact was Justin Berg up until very recently. Like he would have been, kind of, I guess, the go between you and CrossFit on a lot of things, a lot of like competition-y kind of things, and standards and clarification and stuff. He would have been the kind of person that you would have been communicating with a lot, or his, dog's bodies or whatever. And now obviously he's gone and Dave Castro's back. Does that change anything? Does that change how you approach things? Does it change like the type of things that the type of concerns that you raise? Does it change your attitude towards like, oh fuck, this just got harder, or oh, this just got easier? Does it change anything about the actual day-to-day of it?
So to us, the point is that it shouldn't, right? Like regardless of who's in a role and what history may be with certain people, it shouldn't change what an ideal competition looks like, what a good conditions for athletes are. That shouldn't change anything. So I think the areas of concern remain the same. The ways we communicate them are the same. Justin was on meetings occasionally. He wasn't always on there though. We did have some communications with just the games team on the whole. So usually it was the whole team was kind of copied in on everything, and we'd have infrequent meetings to bring up certain things, and we were kind of a sounding board for certain issues. So I think that's just going to continue to be the same. We're going to try to loop in the whole games team. I think they had expressed in the past that they didn't want to feel like people were being bypassed by trying to contact only specific members of the team. So we copy the whole team in on everything. And then when there's calls, everyone's invited, and it's kind of classic when there's video calls or things, like you can't really expect everybody to be able to make every call. So sometimes we get a bigger group of the games team, sometimes less. Depending on time of year, it feels like sometimes it's more planning and sometimes it's more execution or debrief. But we've been trying to help them. We even just accumulate more information by surveying athletes and getting more of a feel of what athletes are thinking and what's going on behind the scenes from our perspective. So Don Fall's actually been pretty great. He's had a pretty open door policy with us, which is terrific. And he's kind of now it's just sort of the same thing. We email for various things and set up calls, and usually it's like Don and the whole group. And since Dave's come in, we haven't really set up a full call with the whole team yet, but I think we are doing so next week. So it's just we haven't had the initial call yet. But on the horizon, and from my perspective, it shouldn't change anything. It's an interesting time because I think we have some things that we're going to try to raise as little things that can maybe be easy wins for the games this year. But we're 4 weeks away. There's not a ton of time to take on anything huge, and we're well aware of that, and I think they're aware of it. So we're going to try to make what we feel are pretty reasonable recommendations based on things we saw or information we got post semifinals. And there's small procedural things that we think can maybe be really easily changed, and there's some larger scope things that they're going to take a little longer, and it's probably more conversations for after the games. So I think having Dave back we'll see. I actually like to think of it a little bit. I think him and Boz working together will probably be a pretty good thing. I think with what we saw kind of last year, there were a few small details and events that felt like they were a bit of a ball drop in terms of execution, where like certain lanes were transitioning farther than other lanes. And there were things like that we kind of flagged as, this is a bit of a fairness concern. But doing some homework on it, when Dave was programming, there's very few instances of that ever existed, and basically only existed in mass start events that were very long. So I think that he's got a good eye for certain things, and he's kind of more of an engineer, where Dave is a little more of an artist. And so I think that combined vision can be very beneficial if they work well together. So, I think we're going to try to say, like, hey, these are the kinds of things that have caused issues in the past at the games. These are the types of errors that have been repeated across many years. These are the type of issues that have led to major controversy. So even for the next 4 weeks over the course of testing and setting up demo teams and things like that, is there ways to keep a more sharp eye on these types of categories of things, just to make sure those things don't happen? Because it's not good for anybody. Like, then they've got to deal with a bunch of backlash, or they got to have a press conference, or we got to deal with 100 appeals in one workout, and nobody wants that. So it's the more we can solve these problems upstream, the better. And that's kind of just the main goal, always has been. And I think that's going to be the goal for leading into the games and then leading into the next season.
Did you guys did the PFA have a call after? Have you guys had a call, like I said, the athletes, since Dave came back?
Who?
Like, as in you and the athletes, was there like do you guys have regular meetings, like you guys and say
We have not that many so the PFA is basically right now got a small executive committee of, I think, 9 of us, which is basically, there's people with basically general representation of all the geographic regions. So I think there's like 2 of us from North America, 2 from Europe, 1 from Asia, 1 from Africa, 1 from Australia, that kind of thing. Representing broadly there's age group representation, team representation, and open division representation from all the groups. The only thing we don't have is teenagers, but I feel like most teenagers don't want to be sitting on an admin call for,
or you'd need like a parent with them, or
something. So we have someone who's in the master side of it, so I think that the concerns of those are roughly similar, but anyway, that's the only place that we're lacking. But we try not to loop in the General Assembly as much as we can. We have a large group of emails and things for a large body of athletes. It's not complete. Like, it wouldn't encompass every semifinal athlete from this year. And partly that's just because that body of athletes is always changing. So we're kind of playing catch up all the time. So we have been trying to touch base with all those people by surveying everyone after major events like Wodapalooza, after the semifinals, sending out a mass survey blast for people to be like, hey, what went well, what went poorly, what are things that you maybe noticed from this, so that we can share that information with CrossFit as well. But I feel like people get buried in calls, like meetings and calls. And our experience so far has been like, we try to send less emails unless they're important or there's information to be gathered, like the surveys and things, because people just ignore them. Or you get sometimes in a large call, if there's 200 people, nobody says anything, because everybody kind of it's sort of like a bit of a group think and like a mob mentality thing. There's like this bystander effect where everyone kind of just listens. Kind of, you think they're listening, you hope they're listening. But
Pat, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm a teacher. This is literally every fucking day of my life. It's like, you ask a question, you're like, anyone can take that. Like, anyone answer.
That was a real question. That was a real question. Yeah. So we have been, we've noticed that in the past. And so this year, what we actually tried to do is we set some in-person meetings at most of the semifinals, so that everybody was invited. It was a round check-in and things, so people could come in and we'd have a little briefing and a discussion about what we're trying to do, what the goals are with the PFA, and if people have questions to ask us, if people have ideas, whatever, mostly just to read people in on what they're doing and be able to do it in person. Because I think you just benefit a little more from that. One person asks a question and all of a sudden everybody feels a little more emboldened and empowered to ask questions. And that's super valuable. And that's kind of what we want. It's super easy in those video calls for it just to be like, all of a sudden it's a lecture. Brent's talking for a bit. I talk for a bit, and then it's quiet, and then, okay, bye. And you don't even know if anybody heard or listened to anything. So we had set up Summit semifinals in person. We have plans to have an in-person meeting after the games is finished, basically the Monday afterwards, where, again, when people are riled up, emotions are fresh, and people are more likely to engage and contribute a little bit on things like that. And it's helpful for us to actually drum up that engagement in person. And so we're playing more with little ways to do that. But contacting the whole mass of athletes regularly is difficult, and it seems kind of fruitless in what we've
Yeah.
seen so
You
far.
don't want to be
So
that like fly around either. That's, like pissing
yeah,
everyone off. Like,
what we've
uh,
done poorly in the past and we're trying to improve on is we have the Instagram page, and it was
that
pretty
post
dead
actually,
for a long
yeah, was it
time.
yesterday, the day before? That was really good. The rookie one, that was
Yeah,
good.
for
That
the
kind of stuff
rookies.
is
And
good.
so we have a bunch of informational stuff that we've been creating over the course of a couple of years. And, it's hard to know where and when to kick it out. And
Mm.
we've kind of started creating more of a plan. And this is because we've had a little more help with some people as well that help keep us on this stuff. It's hard enough for me to manage my own Instagram page, let alone have to manage another one. So, we're going to start to see more posts with actual regular frequency from that
Yeah.
group, which is what you need. It keeps putting it in front of people, once a week, something like that over the course of a year with information that we think is valuable, helps people. We have some cool stuff coming up about what athletes should do for even like tax purposes, things like that. Just things that athletes should be aware of as they get more and more involved in the space. And so it's always been more of an informational outlet, and we're trying to just make sure that people have what they need to be successful in their it's more about equipping people with those skills and tools. So that I think is a better tool for us than setting up regular calls with a
Yeah.
large body of athletes. It's like this, I can blast out, we make a post, I share it on my story. A lot of other athletes start sharing it. It propagates a little more. It gets in front of more people. They click it and see it. You look at it and you say, oh, advice for rookies at the games. And you read through it and it's like, oh, that's pretty nice, pretty useful stuff. And then it kind of gets us more in front of people. And if those calls are really just informational anyways, and a lot of people just taking things in and nodding their heads, that serves the same purpose, but has a little more of a visual aid and it's less inconvenient. So
one of the things, like when Dave was around initially, one of the things that there was kind of like a few people were saying like, oh, there's a fear of being excommunicated, or there's a fear of like you can't speak out or you can't say anything, or you'll be, like somehow targeted or not included or something if you don't like kind of toe the line, or if you stick your head up too high, basically you'll be whack-a-mole back down or whatever. And obviously it's all kind of anecdotal, and like it's kind of hard to say if like, oh yeah, that's a fair assessment of what's happening, or like, oh, maybe that's your perceived experience of it or whatever. When he was appointed to his new role, so like director of whatever, GM of sport or whatever, GM of the sport, like were you guys fielding those kind of things, like those kind of concerns from athletes, or were people just kind of like, oh fuck it, just see what happens? Like, was there any kind of like nervousness in that sort of way?
I don't think we were at the PFAA dealing with a lot of personal reach out from people, but I think that sentiment's around, and I don't think it comes from nowhere. So, and I think that part of the concern too is a little bit of the that it's just been a bit of a revolving door with that team. And one person, everybody just kind of changes roles, and it's the same people all the time doing the same thing. So, we keep hoping and expecting for there to be some change in the way things are done, but it's really hard to do that if it's always the same people, and it's really easy to slip into familiar patterns. So I think, for some of us looking at that, it was a bit of, I don't know, it felt like there was this opportunity to inject new blood into this team and maybe have a fresh perspective that can really contribute to driving a new culture and things like that. That was a bit of a missed opportunity, but I think at the end of the day, there was some ball dropping, and we were hoping for some change to avoid that. And this has changed. So I think you have to give it a chance to see how everybody fits in these new roles, and if things are going to work out well. And I don't know, I feel like my approach to a lot of that stuff is the same as I approach a lot of things, and it's with high hopes and low expectations. So I think we'll see how it goes. And again, like we're trying to play a more active role to help, just help avoid some of those things that we don't want to see, and guide the discussion around the things that we think interest the athletes. And so we'll see. I mean, I think that the team will hopefully do a great job this year. And, if things go well, we won't have much to talk about come August, September. And honestly, that would make me happier than anything. So I don't want to be spending a ton of time doing it. I'm very hopeful for success. But, I think that people have their reservations given their experience with, with Dave and other members of the team over the course of a long time. So I think for whatever, any number of reasons for different people, trust has been violated at some time. And trust can take a lifetime to build and just a moment to destroy, right? So I think that more than anything is the uphill battle that CrossFit and the games team are fighting right now is, after even just this year, like some of the things that happened, the weights were loaded wrong at the open announcement. And, there's been a lot of small ball drops over the course of the year and over the course of the last bunch of years. And you can throw a rock and hit different mistakes. And partly the advent of more of this YouTube, social media, errors are being exposed at a greater rate than ever before and talked about a lot more. So I think in some ways it feels like there are more than there have ever been, but I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think that they're just becoming more public. But, I think that the trust has been eroded a little bit with some of these recent mistakes. And so now they have to take some time to rebuild that. And it won't happen instantaneously. I think it's going to be with, you put in new people in new roles, you bring Dave back and you say, you better nail the games. And then we can notch that one as a win and we can move on to the next one. And then we have to start building up some wins. Right. So really and our job with the PFA is we want to help them notch wins in terms of how the competition flows and things like that. I have nothing to say about the affiliate side, all that kind of stuff. No idea. I exist in the competitive athlete sphere. That's where my knowledge is. That's where my experience is. So when it comes to contributing on things like that, I have some thoughts. And if you'll listen, I'm happy to share. But beyond that, the team there is doing a lot of other things, and they're looking at a lot of other areas where they can start to stack up some wins. And I think that's, I had some conversations with Don Fall around the semifinals, and that's kind of what he had communicated to us as well. As he's like, we have to start banking wins and doing a few things and just building momentum back in the right direction, because there's been a little bit of backslide in the last while, and they're aware that trust is low. So I will say, to the credit of that team and to Don and the people that are coming on that games team right now, communication's been high and they've had a very open door policy. So with us, and it seems other members of the CrossFit sphere, whether it's sponsors or agents or people, he's been very willing to listen and try to assimilate some of that information. And I think that they're trying to make things better for this year. And I think that the games will be a really good opportunity for them to just show it. Right.
Well, listen, I'm conscious you have to go at the top of the hour. So thank you for coming back on. It's been great to catch up with you. It's like April last year that we last spoke. I was like, it was probably maybe November, and then I checked and I was like, oh fuck, it was actually a long time ago.
Oh wow.
Well, so yeah, it's great to catch up. Best of luck with the rest of your run up to the games and Madison and everything else, and with your dadding and husbanding and dog dadding as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've been on a holiday lately. My wife's working up north, and her mom's up there, and they've got the baby. So I'm just at home with the dog. I had 2 weeks just at home, me and the dog, and they're back in 2 days here, 3 days. So
that's always it's a bizarre scenario where I find sometimes if I'm without the kids, that time goes immeasurably faster than when I'm with the kids. It's like rest periods in a workout where you're like, hang on, there's no way that 1 minute and the other 1 minute were the same. It's that just doesn't.
It's been interesting. I will say, my wife left me a nice honey-do list, but the first couple days I sort of tidied the main areas where I'm gonna kind of be living. I'm in the kitchen, living room, upstairs. I've just been I did a little surface tidy, and then living with just by yourself, it's pretty easy to keep things tidy, just because I'm using one bowl, one fork, one spoon, it's no big
eating
deal,
out
right?
of the saucepan, who cares?
So yeah, you start to really appreciate how easy it is to just take care of yourself. Yeah. But we then after 2 days, I'm like, okay, I tidy everything up. I spend 2 days doing nothing. Finish my training, finish work, immediately lay on the couch and just watch TV for way too long or something.
Yeah.
And then after about another 2 days of that, I was all tapped out of doing nothing. So I'm picking 2-3 things a day, chipping away at the list, just taking care of running some errands, taking care of some things that need doing. You know, I'm starting to do some weeding in the yard. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. So I've been actually more productive than I maybe initially thought I would be. Initially my thoughts were I would just completely be a vegetable and do nothing.
It probably says a lot about both of our approaches to life. The fact that if I was left a list, I would have done your middle 2 days there of doing nothing. I would have done that for 1 week and 6 days. And then the night before they came back, I'd be like, fuck, I have that whole list. I haven't done it. And I'd panic.
Oh no,
and
see, you got to do it a little before, because the night before I got to do another clean.
Oh, so yeah, of course.
Everything's nice.
You have to clean your saucepan and your bowl.
Yeah, just wipe the counters, get everything put away. The dog's been kind of running in and outside pretty regularly, so we've got lots of grass that's kind of trailing into the house. So I got to do more of a tidy right before they show up, just so if they got a nice shine on them when they walk in.
Yeah, that's good.
If I have too many more chores to do before that, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you. All the best. And we'll talk to you again.
All right. Cheers. Good to see you.
You too.